Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Downright Annoyed with ComicManAndy, the comic book show that we have hopefully every week, but it's been more like every few weeks lately. I don't know who to blame most. I feel like all of us are to blame in one way or another for that. But maybe blame me this week because we are reading From Hell, and we decided to break it up into two chunks. So, yeah, you can blame me this week because it was a lot to read. But anyways, I am Jackson with Just Annoyed, and I will let the other two introduce themselves, starting with Mike.
Me. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Mike from the Downright Nerdy podcast. We are reading this monstrosity of a brick. We're reading about up to about right there. It is really, really good. You guys need to read this and then watch what we have to say about it because there's a lot that goes on. You can find me at Downright Nerdy Podcast. Just the links down in the description below, and I'll hand it off to ComicManAndy.
Sweet, and as always, we have ComicManAndy. Welcome, sir.
Hey, I'm ComicManAndy, the Pinkies Out podcast and the Comic Core YouTube channel, where we do another comic review show on Monday nights called Modern Men. But we're here to get down. We're here to get dirty. We're here to talk about From Hell. Ooh.
Yeah, so From Hell, just to lay this out for the viewers, is a historical fiction, I guess. It's based on a theory as to who Jack the Ripper was. Obviously, we know Jack the Ripper was never caught, but essentially it is it's very novelesque. It doesn't feel like a comic book. It's not exciting per se, but it seems to be very detailed as far as historical accuracy is concerned. And it's based on, and of course I don't have the research up, but it's based on a novel, a historical, I guess it would be historical theory book that was written in the 70s. And I can't remember the name of it, but if somebody can pull it up while I'm talking. But essentially, it follows a group of women who are prostitutes, a detective who's kind of put on the case, as well as a doctor who, very unlike the movie, which I did have some experience in, is spelled out as the Ripper right from the start of the book. There's no mystery here, really. But yeah, Mike, you said you really liked what you've read so far. Obviously, you read a chapter farther than us, so be careful. But
I did, yeah. Don't worry. Yeah, because I feel like every chapter has its own specific arc that and specific idea that it wants to portray. That I'll be able to cut out that last chapter. But I almost have to disagree with you in the sense that I thought that this was a very exciting book. While it did take me a very long time to get through it because of all the because of how much information is in there. And I don't know if you guys know, but in the back of this book, there is there's an appendix. So every here, for example, think of it almost as like, what do you call those things? Like when you're writing a paper and you have to put down your references at the very bottom, they call it
bibliography.
So it's essentially that, a page by page bibliography on everything that Alan Moore got his information from with each page of each chapter. And it's very, very, so while reading this, I actually had two bookmarks. I had a bookmark here and a bookmark here, so I could flip back and forth to find out all sorts of juicy info on each chapter.
Real quick, the book that I was referring to is Jack the Ripper: The Final Solution by Stephen Knight. So in looking at those appendix sections, it seemed like a lot of the information he used came from that. And by the way, Andy, definitely recommend this to Ken. I feel like Ken would just eat this up, because he's like always diving into like the history of all the crap. But Andy, what'd you think?
I think that I read this in a format very different from you guys, where you guys had the actual hardcovers that you bought, the deluxe editions with some color splashes in there.
No color.
No color. You guys did go black and white. Okay. I had an option. I went with Comixology for convenience, and I think the one with the color splashes was like $30+ on it. Well, I went with the standard one because it was a lot cheaper, substantially cheaper, like $7 or $8. And I will say that reading this book via Comixology was excruciatingly bad.
I can imagine that.
Terrible.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Terrible.
I can see that.
I'm sending you guys my therapy bills after this.
Really? Okay. So now I guess my question would be, do you understand what's happening in the book? Like, are you keeping up with the story? Do you feel lost? Like, what's the issue?
It was a solid 150 pages before I really felt like I was getting what was going on in the story.
Okay.
I mean, 150 pages. I was into chapter 4 or chapter 5.
Got it.
Ooh.
Wow. Now, see, I really thought that it hooked me and it's an odd chapter to hook you because it's very meandering, but there's a chapter in here where basically the doctor is recruiting his driver
chapter 4.
Yeah, to take him around town, he's showing him all of the different Mason, like Freemason architecture that's around the city, and he's explaining kind of, you know, how women used to rule and men took that back from them, and there's a very like sexist, anti-feminist agenda that this doctor has that's
a theme throughout the entire book.
Right. Yes. But that chapter was the one where it's like, okay, I get the motivations here, along with the fact that I didn't expect this to be a blackmail situation. Like Jack the Ripper, according to this theory, did not just go kill these people because he was a serial killer. There is a blackmail plot involving a royal bastard son. And that is what spawned this. And there's all sorts of stuff going on in this. There's that whole like Mason angle. There's kind of the fake news, poor media angle going on. There's cops who are trying to get, trying to up their name in the organization. And, you know, if they get more points, then it's good for them. They don't really care if he's actually the killer. They're after anybody to catch. So yeah, there was a lot to chew on in this, I thought.
Yeah. So, I mean, I talked a little bit about the feminist, the lack thereof, I guess. But that theme, and then the theme of social classes, is very seen throughout the entire novel. So far throughout the entire novel, but the way that Jack the Ripper is portrayed, there's a very clear path. While it may take a long time, Andy said that he didn't get it in until about chapters 4 or 5. But those first 3 chapters are so kind of like out there, and you don't really know what the hell is going on, especially with the prologue, with the prelude, or what was it?
It was a prologue. The 2 cops that are talking. Yeah.
Even the prologue. I mean, we don't even see that character come back until chapter 5, right? So I did get a little bit lost with that as well. So I was lightweight in the same boat as you, Andy. But for me, Jackson, it was that chapter that you were talking about, which really started to hook me a lot, especially when I was reading the appendages in congruency with the novel.
So let me add to why it took me so long to find a foothold with this book. Was there are 2 major problems that I find with this, 3 actually. One was reading it digitally via Comixology, just was excruciating. It's excruciating. 2, the 1880s British vernacular was so terribly difficult to read, and then when you compound that when you add the art, it compounds. It adds a level of confusion. I don't know what characters who. I don't know who these characters even are. I had no idea the 2 characters in the prologue were the police officers later on in the story, and it's just so excruciating to figure out what's going on with the vernacular and the verbiage and the way it's written. Like there's an entire chunk of the beginning of one of the chapters that's written in German. It's just fucking written in German. And
very strange.
like at this point I was like, this thing's gotta get me something, give me some meat on the bones here, because I'm just flipping through these pages looking at nothing.
Oh, you can't say there's no meat on these bones, though. I mean, there is a ton of shit going on, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
but reading from my standpoint digitally on Comixology, there's that, which compounds into the vernacular and the verbiage, which is very difficult to understand unless you've taken some classes or unless you've had some experience with. And then with the art is so nitty gritty. I can't tell who's who half the time in the book.
I had trouble with the four ladies.
Yeah.
The main four prostitutes. I did have some trouble following who was who, but then it kind of has like a section for each of them, which I feel like really helps. I want to point out Gore's note here about basically the horrible treatment of poor women, and especially they point out in the section of London where this is taking place. And somebody, if you want to help me remember what it was called, but basically they say, I think it was like 25 people per household. Like there's this giant population, and there's not anywhere for them to go. So yeah, the women in this, as far as the setting, the women are kind of just trying to get a few pennies so that they can find a place to stay and get their fix. You know,
at one point they're literally whoring themselves out, and after each trick or each turn, they're going right back to the bar and drinking their earnings and then going right back out again.
So that was interesting. So I wanted to actually bring that up because clearly there's a level of addiction that's happening here, right? Because it's not like there's the one woman who literally says, like, I already made the 4 pennies I needed or whatever, you know, she says. But I spent it on gin or whatever she was drinking, and now she's got to go back out again. And that's when the Ripper gets her. But yeah, it's you know, having been in the thralls. Sorry, having been in the thralls of addiction myself, I do get that though. It's like I don't take less pity on the characters because of this. And then there's Andy. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was my fault. I do that a lot. I kind of took a lot of that, whether it be the poor folks or the just the fact that it's mainly women. It was Jack the Ripper taking, or not Jack the Ripper, but it was more Alan Moore showing using that as a metaphor for all of humankind throughout the history up until that point. Because he talks about a lot of the history, especially that one chapter we're talking about. He tells his driver about the history of not only masonry but the history of London, and how it's not just about the cities; it's what the cities are built upon and how they build things, right? And it inevitably will be its downfall.
So I want to real quick. I worked at a country club as a waiter. And once a year, or maybe twice a year, we had the Masons would come in and have like a function. And it was always strange how the women were put in a different room. Like the men had their board table that we would set up, and then the women had like a separate room where they would, you know, have dinner or whatever. But reading this, of course, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Like, okay, now this all makes sense. Like, because everybody was kind of just like weirded out by it, you know, and apparently that's a thing with the Masons, according to old Jack the Ripper here. What did you think about the formation of Jack's name, Jack the Ripper, where it came from?
Seemed a little too convenient, honestly.
I mean, it's what happened, though. I mean, that's a historical fact.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, that a letter was written to the newspaper. Like, that's a big part of the Jack the Ripper story is you know, the media has not changed.
No, it's not. And I was about to bring up the similarities to like the Night Stalker or what's his name? The dude who went from Florida, the teacher that everyone was all super. He was super charismatic.
Ted Bundy.
No, not another one too. I mean, but like all these, you know, serial killers, they attach these names to it just so that they get that headline. I mean, there's actually there's a panel here where all you see is the newspaper guys trying to figure out how to make the story, you know, make it good news, right? Or make it news that people want to buy.
Well,
right?
and the police too, like they're involved too. Right? Yeah. I mean, I guess it's possible that it actually was a letter from the killer. Maybe I guess that's possible because this isn't this is not a historical fact. This book, this is based on theories, based on things that happened. But yeah, Jack the Ripper. The pig's blood's dry, so I'm gonna grab the red ink, and just the fact that like nothing has changed just kind of disturbed me reading this. I mean, you have like when they find the first body, all these people show up like trying to take pictures by it, and
they're literally like taking selfies, like in front of the
yes. So, but yeah, no, I thought that was interesting.
Before we move on, I wanted to kind of talk. I know, Andy, you were a little bit down on the artwork. I mean, I kind of felt the complete opposite. I thought this artwork was incredibly entrenching and engrossing, especially the black and white. Did you have color in yours, Andy?
No, it was straight black and white.
No, with black and white. Man, I just think that everything just captured the tone of London and just the hopelessness of like all these characters and just like the evilness of this fucking guy, right?
Yeah. So you're at a section in the story there where the art was much more refined, in my opinion. The first 3 or 4 chapters, it was extremely difficult to distinguish who was who based on the way the panels were laid out and the art was done.
Right. Gosh, I'm trying to find a good example of
but I get what you're saying, how the art paints the world for you.
The dingy, shitty picture of rainy ass London in the 1880s or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was effective, but I do get what you're saying. There are times, Andy, where it's like, which woman is talking? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I totally get that, but almost like just a portrayal. Like this is essentially the same exact photo, three separate times, but it just shows how hopeless this woman is feeling, right? There's more emotion in these black and white panels than I've seen in some modern comics.
So I'll find a good representation here in a minute, but a comparison of actual art in your hand versus digital art for this story, you'll see what I'm talking about. That's not a good panel to show publicly.
There is a lot of that in this.
There's a very stark difference between the art in your hand, like you're reading, like you held that picture up to the camera, and I can tell how much better that art looks on paper than it does digitally.
And you know what's pretty interesting too is that there's obviously several different copies of this book. There's actually a paperback version of this book, which I kind of in retrospect wish that I had gotten. But there's a paperback, and the pages are the type of material the pages are printed on is that like newspaper type of print, which is kind of like the 1800s-ish. So like it's not as thick, and you almost feel like you want that. You get that like black shit on your fingers, like after reading the paper. It's that kind of material of paper, which I kind of wish I got that in retrospect. But this is still. I mean, I do like my hardback. It looks a lot.
It's a pretty badass copy of the book.
Yeah, I didn't even notice it until just now. The little knife right there on the spine. That's kind of cool.
Now, were you expecting more? Obviously this is black and white, so you're not going to see like blood red ink. But were you expecting more violence?
But the blood that was represented in all black was just as satisfying as, if not more so, disturbing than red blood.
See, I
less
couldn't
cartoony.
Tell. I couldn't tell reading it digitally. I couldn't tell. It just looked like black smears, and I had no idea it was even blood.
Shit, you should have just bought it, man. Now you're not gonna want to buy it for the second half.
It's not too expensive. It's just $39.99. No big deal.
I don't think I paid that for it though.
I don't think so either.
I think it was like 20 something.
20 something, yeah.
Yeah, but go ahead, Andy. Sorry.
Let's be honest here. I mean, reading digitally, when I talk about the challenges of how this art lays out digitally, every guy has got dark hair, a mustache, a medium build. They all look so incredibly similar in a lot of the panels.
I felt like there was some defining characteristic on the main ones where I knew who was who. Like there's the guy who wears like the bowler hat with the mustache. He's the detective. Obviously there's like the Abe Lincoln top hat on Jack the Ripper, right? And yeah, I thought they did a good enough job of like having a close-up scene of the characters talking, and then when it backed away, it was a little harder to tell who's who. But at that point, you can tell just because you know who's in the scene, I guess.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I spoke with John's Comics with Kids about this after I finished reading this earlier today, actually. Because I know that he's a huge fan of the TV show The Wire. Have you guys ever seen the show The Wire?
No.
Yes, the first season.
Yes. So okay, you only watched the first season, but
yeah, I thought it was unpopular opinion. I thought that show's a little overrated, but I know I'm going to.
If you get a chance, dude, if you get a chance, maybe revisit it and maybe try to see if you can go because they're actually this book has structurally a lot of similarities to The Wire in the sense that Jack. I mean, we see the progression of someone becoming into someone who becomes as violent as Jack the Ripper is almost the same. I mean, I won't give any spoilers, but it's a very similar, not similar arc, but there's a lot of. I feel like there's a lot of similarities in the way that each story is portrayed. So if you get a chance, watch The Wire after reading this.
I actually should watch that because it's one of those things where it's like if everybody loves it that much, it's got to be better than I was giving it credit for. Now, speaking of story structure, now, did either of you go revisit the movie since we started reading this? Have either of you watched the movie?
I've seen it, and I'm never going to go see that again.
Oh, God, I think it's good. I like the movie,
I understand.
But it's different. It's very different. In the movie, it's a mystery who Jack the Ripper is. And you're not following it from the perspective of the killer at all. It's Johnny Depp.
From, Johnny Depp's the Abernith or Aber something, right?
Yes. And I actually really like the movie, but it was fun to read this because it's completely different from what I expected because I had seen the movie, right? Now, the movie was like an R-rated. Critically, it was well received. Not nearly as dense as this is, though. I mean, this is like, but I remember being surprised when I saw the movie that it was like the old doctor guy. So I find that intriguing too, that it's like this old, well-to-do doctor. And we even get like a little background story on him. We get kind of how he grew up, how he entered the Masons. So yeah, I found it fascinating. Pretty much the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. Once I got past the first couple chapters and I kind of had my grasp on what was happening, I was totally like, at first I was like, man, this is a lot to read. And then I think last night when I picked it back up and said like, oh shit, I got 4 chapters left or whatever. I whipped through the last few chapters that we had to read. So.
You know what's funny? Like now that I'm like in retrospect, even though I just finished the last chapter, is I initially said it was about the same time that you, Jackson, also kind of got really into it. Looking back at those first 3 chapters or so, seeing the progression of the fabricated history of Jack the Ripper becoming the serial killer. And how he had watched his father die. He ended up becoming joining a cult. Essentially, like he's just trying to find some kind of purpose, and then just devoting his life into the medical field. And then he starts out by torturing animals. Like everyone says, like, oh, every serial killer starts to torture animals. You see him like really press the neck of that rat and then rip it open, and then he's doing the autopsies and stuff. I found that very intriguing.
Sorry, I was slow on the mute button there. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I agree. I liked that. I still didn't know what the fuck was happening though. Like I was lost as to what the connection was going to be between the child because the book basically you've got the prologue, which is the 2 cops like years later talking about this. You've got the first chapter, which is the prince being introduced to the store person, and they go across the street, right? No.
No, you're right about that. But the prologue is not about them talking about their time as Jack the Ripper. I think they're talking about another serial killer that the detective was not able to solve. And so when we see him trying to solve the Jack the Ripper story, he's thinking to himself like, "Oh shit, I'm not getting this again. I'm not getting this this guy."
Oh, that
again.
wasn't how I thought. I thought it was the early 1900s at the beginning in the prologue.
You could be right. I mean, it was
because
like
he never solved he never solved Jack the Ripper.
No, he never solved Jack the Ripper.
Right.
But I thought that there was another murder that he didn't solve as well. That he I don't know. Let me double check now.
Gore, why don't you just tell us?
Gore,
I know you
set me straight. Come on.
Those first 3 chapters, I had such a difficult time with the pacing that I couldn't get engaged enough to figure out what the hell was going on. Like anything, any sort of little flash or
You're right, Jackson,
distract me. And I would get distracted from reading. I would read maybe a couple of panels or maybe a page or two. And then, oh, hey, look, so-and-so posts something on YouTube. Check that out. But it's just the pacing was really hard for me to grab a hold of. And it wasn't until that 4th chapter, which I thought I hated the 4th chapter the most, but the 4th chapter actually did more to draw me into the story and actually it delivers more, in my opinion, than the first 3 chapters in the prologue did.
I thought the 4th chapter was like brilliant. Because you're right. At the beginning, you're like, oh, this is just going to be a meandering. This is going to be the entire thing. But then as it all starts to come together and you're seeing the internal, thought process of this guy and how he's like in a disgusting way bringing in this poor like driver guy, his little chauffeur. It was, very disturbing, very interesting. A lot of learning about the Masons was kind of fun.
He baits him.
It ended great too when he vomited. When the driver vomited, just once he just took it all in, and he's just like, "Oh my god, I can't deal with," and he's like getting a chuckle out of it because he's vomiting, just spilling his lunch.
He baits him, right? He tells him that if he's does these things, he can become a Freemason, and I highly doubt he's ever going to get him to the point of becoming a Freemason. He's just going to be his driver.
Yeah, you're probably right.
He's his wheelman. He's his wheelman in Jersey, so to speak, where you're not part of the gang, but you're wink wink part of the gang.
I liked how he has him give like a specific item of sorts to each one of the victims as he goes so that they can pick them out later, which is perfect given the art style and given the fact that like, okay, all these women are like disheveled messes. Like you have to be able to have some sort of like item that you can actually literally spot and say, okay, we gave her the scarf. We gave her the hat. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty clever.
That was one of my favorite parts of the book so far out of these 7 chapters. Was the first item he gave her was a black bonnet. In the pitch black of night, he expects him to find this black bonnet. And he even there's a little bit of a retort back and forth, and I laughed pretty good. I'm like, that's clever.
Yeah, the character, the Jack the Ripper character is pretty fascinating. I mean, I'm, not only as like a historical thing that happened, the fact that this guy is like such a legend, but in this book, he's very interesting because he's not like a psychotic, seething at the mouth killer. He's like a very, maniacal, like genius of sorts, right?
He's calculating.
Yeah, it's almost like what he wants to do though makes him. I felt like in not the plateaus, but the peaks of his actions almost felt like he was regressing to his childhood and becoming a boy of wonder again. And it made it really fucking creepy.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like with when you study the serial killer aspect, like there's like this this sexual arousal, and there's like once they finally get to it is when there's like their version of like a fucking orgasm, right? And seeing this like all in this textual, in this comic book form, man, it gets, especially the black and white. I'm really happy you told me to get the black and white because this has become easily one of my favorites. But one thing I wanted to talk about real quick was the one chapter where all you see. Oh, actually, before we do that, I just flipped to this. The scene when he meets the Elephant Man, right? And he becomes extremely just fascinating. He treats him like he treats him more human than he does actual humans.
Yeah,
right?
because he's like
a god in India, right? And he's like, I'm a god in India. Oh shit,
Yeah,
like it's just so interesting to me. But that whole chapter is drawn in a from the point of view of Mr. Gull, right? Jack the Ripper. So you don't see his face. I almost thought that was going to be the entire book, but yeah, you don't see his face. You only see his hands at most, right? Maybe
How about the fact that he brings one of the victims by to like say something nice to the Elephant Man it's so creepy and fucked up, dude. It was awesome because he probably sees more value in that like scientific anomaly or medical study than he does in an actual not an actual human being. That's offensive, but in a normal human being, I should say. And I liked that the fact that the Elephant Man was in there. It's another like interesting, like, oh shit, well, I don't know, I didn't read that part of the appendixes or anything, whether or not that really they think that happened, but interesting, right?
I highly recommend reading this and reading the appendages as well. Appendices, I think.
Sure. The appendix.
I couldn't make out for the life of me. I couldn't make out what that Elephant Man was saying at all.
Oh yeah, no,
that was hard. It took me a minute.
Well, hold on though. See, I think that was like genius because you could make out part of it, you couldn't make out other parts. But like if you've ever talked to someone with like a speech impediment of sorts, sometimes you can't understand what they're saying. So it's like, yeah, you might not be able to understand everything he says, but that's okay because that's realistic, right?
And to be quite honest with you, I ended up skimming over that parts of his
dialogue.
Yeah, because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what it meant. It's funny you say that because that's exactly what I did.
Well, that's that's like in real life when you talk to a disabled person, Mike, and I'm sure you just kind of like zone out and don't listen to what they have to say because you're so mean, right?
What'd you say?
I mean, you're just I was thinking you son of a bitch. I set you up pretty good there. Set you up pretty good. That was
oh wow,
you son of a bitch. But Mike hates the disabled, including me, apparently. To make a note of that, people. But no, I like that. Where you were going towards something else before you even ran into the Elephant Man section there, though, right? You were about to.
It was the chapter where you don't see him.
Got it.
That
okay.
was what I was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I love that. It was just that there's so much mystery to that. I'm like, I just want to see what this fucking looks like, right?
Right.
And we finally eventually do get to see him, but it's like, and then when you finally see he's like this old kind of like overweight kind of doctor looking kind of guy, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
This is gonna be creepy as fuck.
He is creepy. And the fact that like he goes overboard where it's like, dude, you don't need to gut these women. That wasn't a requirement of the job. Like you were just tasked with basically he gets told by the royal woman, like the queen or whoever the hell it is. I don't even remember who exactly it is. I think
basically she references the prince as like a second nephew or something like that.
Right. So so she tells him like, hey, get rid of these people. He actually goes, like someone goes to the cops to say, hey, don't actually catch this guy, like get somebody else on the job who won't be able to catch this person. Like there's a whole like inner politicking thing going on here. But yeah, she just tells him to get rid of them. She doesn't tell him, hey, gut them, rip their entrails out and leave them all over the streets. And the first time he kills, like he finishes the job and it's like, dude, you're done, man. But he just stays and he's just fascinated with gutting them, Can
we quickly talk about the way that he became a Mason, like the test that he had to go through? Like, so he had three people come to, like, he was given this like word, right? And he's not supposed to, under no circumstances can he repeat this word to anybody. And the next couple scenes is like these three guys, they take him to the Grand Master of whatever the Masonry is, and he's like, one of them says like, I tortured him and he did to the best of my ability and he didn't say the word. The other guy said I humiliated him. It was like more of a psychological breakdown. He still didn't give the word. And then the third guy said like, I even cut off his manhood and he didn't give up the word. And I'm like, that's where they went with that. Holy shit, he must really like this club, right? And I mean, you got to think that going through something like that would have some kind of effect on someone who already kills animals for fun and just is a great doctor or a mortician too, right? He also cuts up dead bodies. Does what do you call them?
Autopsies.
Yeah. So adding all that crap.
He's really a peach of a guy. I mean, he's really a great guy.
It's so great the way Alan Moore puts this all together and shows us this progression of how he becomes this disgusting excuse of a human, right?
But he still goes home and kisses his wife at night.
That's so sweet. I heard it took Alan Moore 10 years to write this. Is there any? I feel like it was like a 10-year thing.
I could see that. I
don't know where I read it.
It would take me 20 years to read it.
Yeah, and look, Gore is hitting us with his usual bout of he sees himself as something innate in history, and like the Greeks read animal entrails for prophecy, he does the same with his victims. So yeah, he's got a total.
I got a question for Gore. Is there anything you have not read? I'm just curious and not understood to like the fucking core, because this guy he knows everything. I love it when he's in the chat.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And yeah, Gore, you should answer that because we're going to pick that next week.
Yeah, right.
Come in and school us.
Never read.
But yeah, he's fascinating. We've got that character. I'm trying to think if there's anyone we haven't really talked about yet. I guess we haven't really talked about the prostitutes. Now, of course, I can't remember the name. Once again, feeling stupid, but the name of which one was but which one's the woman that ends up in the nut house getting like lobotomized or whatever?
No. So she wasn't a prostitute.
Right.
She was the
mother, right?
Was the wife of the.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Yep. Yeah, but that was like a secret marriage, right?
Yeah, that was a secret marriage. Like he was trying to get away from the prince or whatever, just to have his little fun. And when the carriage guy says, "Your Highness," she was in earshot of that, and the queen's like, "Oh, we can't have her knowing that he's a real prince." So let's. And then so he brings up Mr. Gull, and Mr. Gull's like, "Hey." He starts talking about the right and left sides of the brain, and like "Oh, don't worry, whatever."
Well, you know how they open that. They open that up and begin with the portion where they're in that insane asylum or whatever you want to call it, and he does an inspection, or he checks out a young lady who's suffering from syphilis, and I didn't know. Yeah. My wife read the book, and she told me that this is factually accurate. That what he did very grotesquely to this female in that room was how they checked for that in the 1800s, how they checked for syphilis. That was pretty uncomfortable to just be confronted with that on the page. And that was a doctor doing their job, so to speak. And at that point, syphilis had gone up and
to the spine, right?
Progressed too far into the spinal fluid or something like that, and it made him crazy, or made her crazy.
And I mean, that just shows like the amount of research that Alan Moore did when writing each, everything here. It's so great, which is why he has an appendage for every freaking page.
I mean, Alan Moore has one of those brains, man, where it's just, I mean, it's nutty. It's like the amount of, I mean, how dense his stuff is, even Watchmen. I mean, he's great. Yeah, he's fantastic.
He does a really good job making people uncomfortable while reading this.
Yes. Yeah. I was pretty uncomfortable. I mean, I was like, I love stuff I love some nasty shit. So I was into it.
Let's be honest. There's some graphic sex scenes in this.
Yes.
And then when you add in the terrible 1880s British vernacular, and you're confronted with the phrase "hop on my peg-o," and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
I liked when the woman's like, "Oh yeah, no, you're in there," and he's like, "No, bullshit. Like I know a cunt when I'm in one."
Yeah.
Like
there's lots of uncomfortable. Yeah,
he was trying to get into like the thighs or whatever, and he was like, "No, you're not fooling me." And then she goes back to her other prostitute friends, and she's just like, "Yeah, it looks like I might be pregnant again." Shot it right up in me. Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh man. and they just go on with their pints of bitter and just hanging out and drinking.
Oh, the good old days.
The good old days.
Notice that the Britannia is a focal point for this story. Substantially.
Yes. It's like Cheers. It's like Cheers of the From Hell universe.
Jesus Christ, you're right. It's like the Cheers from Hell.
Where everybody knows your name.
Oh, God. And everybody's done everybody. Oh.
Yeah, yes, it's very much the focal point. And I'm assuming there would be a place like this where all these women kind of go discuss the daily happenings, and they all seem miserable as shit, which is totally understandable.
Well, that also just, I mean, he was really trying to like nail that to the reader, just like London during this time was just complete shit.
Yeah,
he really nailed that home, and he did it really well.
Well, there's literal fires happening in the book too. Like it is hell on earth, basically. So I very, very, very much enjoyed it. Very much enjoyed it.
There's not
Solo a lot here in the chat. Whoa, good to see you, buddy. Miss you.
Nice.
Go ahead, Andy. Sorry about that.
There's not a lot of happy people in this story. In fact, the only time I can think of or reference where I saw people that were happy were the neighborhood people clamoring around the murder site of the first victim, where they're trying to get pictures with the first victim, or when they're like, "Oh yeah, look, there's the dried blood in between the cobblestones. This is it. This is where it happened." Like, that's the largest chunk of happiness that we've, I think, seen so far in 7 chapters.
I mean, other than the Jack the Ripper's he's very, very excited when he's doing this.
I don't know that I would equate that to happiness so much as I would equate that to satisfaction or I don't know.
I bet there's a bit of both in there.
How about random scene that I loved just popped into my head, and I want to say it before I forget. But when the woman is leading Jack the Ripper through to the spot, he looks in the window, and the guy witnesses it, and then another person you see it from the perspective of the two main characters you're following, but then it turns and it's on the other side of the fence, and it's just he can hear someone saying something in the tone of a question, but he doesn't hear exactly what's said. And there's that whole angle of how much of it is your responsibility if you see something like this that's happening and you don't do anything about it.
So my big gripe with so far where we're at right there is that scene where she's bringing him down the hallway through to this courtyard. When the hell did they get a TV in the 1880s? There was a TV in the scene.
Oh, I'd have to look at that.
Go back and look at the art. The guy that's on the other side of the window staring through at the doctor. Oh, this was chapter 6. I think near the end of 6. Or was it?
It had to have been. It might have been 7. Because I think he gets the last kill in 7.
I kid you not. There was a TV in the backdrop, and a very large TV with rabbit ears that looked like it was straight out of the 1950s or 1960s.
Hey,
we're talking the 1880s. So
there is a TV in 1888 apparently.
What's the play here? Is that
I don't know.
Is that a slip up or is there more than this?
Well, I'm going to research it right now. Unless Gore wants to just answer it.
Probably one of the alternate universes in the Gideon Falls. Probably.
Here we go.
So I'm going to look this up now. So continue your conversation. I want to see when people had TVs. Yeah, it's there for sure.
Yeah,
it's got Christian Slater with glasses on
yeah, it completely threw me for a loop because it looked like a 1960s TV show host on the TV, the old school TV with the rabbit ears, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? And Gore says that scene will be developed in the narrative. Remember, Gull sees himself as something in history, not as a slip up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that.
So I know
the TV, I just looked up when were TVs invented, and the 1927 is what pops up. So it would not exist. Now, can I imagine that they accidentally did that? Or there's got to be some reason for it, right?
is a clue to what Moore is doing in the narrative. Okay, so it plays a role because what also plays a role in the story is there's dialogue between the whores and some of the other people about a pending war with Germany coming up in the future. So they're 30 years ahead of what is essentially World War I, and in World War I, everybody got their war news delivered via radio. There were no TVs. So for that TV to be there in that scene is like, that made me pause and make me wonder what was going on.
Yeah, what is going on there?
Thrown for a loop.
There was, yeah.
Oh, so it was a vision. Gull was having a vision.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was a vision. Yeah, that's what I was about to say, because there are a lot of visions in here too. But I don't know if that didn't seem like a vision part though.
No, but why is he having a vision of a television which doesn't come out for another 20, 30, 40 years?
Visions of go ahead, sorry.
He was having a vision of the guy opposite of him through the window. The television is an afterthought to a degree for the vision, but not for more, I think.
Yeah, but it's like still there's the context of like who's seeing that TV. I mean, is Gull not seeing that TV? Is nobody seeing that TV? What is and maybe we'll find out later, or Gore can explain it to us. Don't spoil anything, Gore, if possible. But yeah, that is the good catch, Andy. My brain did not even compute that happened. Like
my brain
what's kind of interesting is that when you ask if Gull is watching the TV in this picture right here, does it look like he's not even looking at the guy in the striped shirt? He's actually looking at the TV in amazement. Like, what the hell
clearly,
is that?
Yeah, he's looking past the guy clearly. Like, because that shot to the left, that panel to the left he's basically looking past that guy. And then he asked the woman, like, hey, did anyone see us down that hall? Like, he seems very like confused about what's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe Gore is right in the sense that he is seeing a weird vision in that person's apartment or whatever.
Right, but still, like there would be nowhere to
not
draw
only
that.
Look at this. Look in the background of the TV. There's a picture of Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay.
So he is having a vision of something in the 50s that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is he an alien? Like what? I mean, like
highlight that comment.
Yeah. Oh, he said Gore says you'll find out.
Yeah, no. I don't think that there is. There's got to be an explanation. Like there's got to be an explanation. Yeah. We'll find out. Thank you, Andy, for bringing that to our attention.
At first thought, you're frozen in the story. It's like, oh my God, he's caught. This is his second victim that we're about to happen, and he's caught. There's some dude actually saw him. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Why is there a window in a hallway with a dude's apartment on the other side? Wait a minute, there's a TV there. Wait a minute, that's Marilyn Monroe. Wait a minute, look at that alarm clock. This isn't fitting. And my brain just threw alarms out, and I was like, ooh. So I stared at that one for a while. Yeah, that's where my brain went, was like getting Falls.
How awesome would it be if Gideon Falls visited the London? I'm in for it. Yeah, Gore, I figured he's not an alien. There's no way. But yeah, I don't know what biographical historical novel Alan Moore would have pulled to find out that Jack the Ripper was an alien. So, but yeah, I don't know. How much more do we have to say? I mean, what's our thoughts overall?
Chapter 7, not much else. So.
Well, I mean, you can keep going because, like, the first victim, he essentially made an incision and removed, was it her heart? Or I forget. He removed something. Then the second victim, not only did he remove something, but then he put her guts on display. So there's a progression that's happening here that's being delivered, that Alan Moore's delivering, that is quite disturbing, like you said, about the development of him. And that second victim was what, chapter 6, you said? I think going into chapter 6, it was 6 going into 7, maybe.
The
second victim.
The second victim is 7.
Okay, it's 7. Okay. Well, then we kind of end up with the law enforcement getting back together a fair bit, right? And them doing another.
They're just having a good show of the time, because usually, I mean, like after the first day, you got to, like, if they don't get much the first day, it just gets exponentially harder each day. And you see that, like, with every couple pages, like, okay, the next day he still doesn't have anything. Other things are going on. The next day, things keep on going on that we don't that he can't find out.
Well, it's also good to point out that between the first victim and the second victim, about a month has taken place. Because he talks about what's his face taking off to Sweden or something like that for a month, taking a vacation and putting so-and-so back in charge after 14 years. And then Alan Moore's playing that card with the calendar on the days. You see the first, and then near the end of chapter 7, it's like the 29th or or something like that at that point. So about a month has taken place between those 3 chapters roughly. So there's something going on there as well, which I was anticipating that detective's boss to be coming back from vacation. I haven't seen that happen yet. Remember that?
Yeah, he left.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
He left and then called up this guy, and he's like, after 14 years, I finally made it to where I wanted to be. I'm out, and now they're pulling me back in, and he was completely disgusted. So that's something to take note in as well, as he was out and gone away from where he wanted to be, and then he was being pulled back into this part of London for this murder, and doesn't sound like he gets away from it.
Right.
He wasn't anticipating a month later, now the second victim. So there's a timeline being portrayed here as well that's kind of hard to follow, but there's bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And it ends with the fabrication of the letter and the naming of Jack the Ripper. So that's kind of where we left off, I would say. And I thought it was an excellent spot to leave off, like as far as where in the narrative we were.
I like that theory a lot with the news media creating. Yeah. I like that theory with the news media creating the letter and creating the name, because I feel like this individual is just too in his own bubble and in his own world to even care about what people would name him. You know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. And it totally makes sense with the irresponsibility of the media. Like just the fact that they're just such fucking scumbags. But I don't know. Not all of them, of course, but in general, but I thought it was great. I'm happy that I chose it. And that's all I got for it, I guess.
Cool. I like it. Do you want to do a grade of the first few chapters, or do you want to wait till the end?
I'll wait. There's 8 left. 8 chapters left. Yeah. So we're halfway.
I think we need to break this off into 2 more episodes. Honestly, I think
we should go 4 chapters.
I think we should slow down. I think I need to slow down and pay a little more closer attention to detail to what's happening now that I know I have a better idea of who's who, and I feel like the art's fleshed out better further into the book than it was at the beginning. It's not an uncommon theme with many comic books, even modern comic books, but I feel like it's gotten a little more, what's the term I'm looking for? It's kind of almost standardized a little bit. Like the characters seem to be more identifiable page to page, things of that nature. So I think there's going to be more bits and pieces hidden that we got to look for. A lot more.
Yeah. Whose turn is it to choose? Curious. Me? No way.
It's you.
Shoot. I did not think about this. All right. How about we just do...
He's torn. He's so torn.
Well, I'm so torn because I want to revisit Sandman, but the next the next volume for Sandman is still in my storage. So I'm going to go with the next 4 with this. Next 4 issues.
All right.
All
right. Well, then next week we will be back here on my channel for another episode. Thank you all for joining us, and I will let everyone say goodbye, this time starting with Andy.
Okay, I'm pot committed to this, so I'm definitely interested in finishing it and seeing where this goes. But hey, I'm ComicManAndy. Check out my channel on YouTube, where I do some content here or there and have some fun with New Comic Book Day and some Mail Call Monday stuff. Check out the Comic Core, where we do a number of shows every week at 10 p.m. And you can find me on all the usual social media platforms at ComicManAndy.
Thank you, sir. And Mike?
We're gonna finish this eventually someday. I can't wait.
Now, luckily, the last third of it is like appendix and all the other shit. So it's
true. Yeah.
It's
and if
not
you guys,
as
yeah,
long.
make sure you guys read the appendix because it's really interesting. Just flip through it every now and then. Like anytime you see something interesting happen on the page, do it. Anyways, I'm Mike from Downright Nerdy Podcast. You can find me down in the link below. And you can also catch me every week doing Downright Annoyed with Movies with Jackson and a couple other awesome YouTuber podcasters. The next movie will be on Jackson's channel next week, Event Horizon, just in time for Halloween. So make sure you guys check it out.
Good one.
Thank you, sir. And I am Jackson, and you're already here. So if you haven't yet, hit the sub button and the little bell button. Make sure you come back next weekend for both of our shows. It is Halloween weekend, so everybody have a spooky week. Watch some horror movies. Maybe pick up From Hell. It's pretty terrifying, probably more disturbing than most horror movies. But yeah, thank you again for joining, and we'll see you next week.